Hall of Fame wide receiver Jerry Rice, who played in the NFL from '85 to 2004, admitted on Saturday that he used Stickum during his playing career, which is a small problem because Stickum and other adhesives have been banned by the NFL since 1981. Rice tweeted the following Saturday night. I apologize, people. After doing my research about Stickum, the NFL banned this in 1981. All players did it. Hashtag equal playing field. Well, Hall of Fame receiver Cris Carter, our colleague who played from '87 to 2002, sent out several tweets over the past few days indicating that he strongly disagreed with Rice's accusation that all players used it. I never used Stickumgate, and Jerry Rice isn't speaking about me or for me. God made my hands. He put Stickumgate on them. Never a need to use anything but my God-given talent and perfect it with a jugs machine. If he used Stickum, JR, referring to Jerry Rice, was cheating. All right, so, Stephen A. Smith, what's your reaction to the tweets by both Jerry Rice and Cris Carter?
First of all, I know both, so in the interest of full disclosure, I'm friends with both. With that being said, Cris Carter was absolutely right to come to the defense of himself because Jerry Rice can't speak for Cris Carter. Jerry Rice can only speak for Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice doesn't know what everybody was doing. And Cris Carter being a Hall of Fame wide receiver, it was entirely appropriate for him to step forward and to say with the vehemence that he said it, that no, everybody didn't do it because I certainly did it. He came to his own defense and he was right to do so. The other thing is I find this incredibly unfortunate because Jerry Rice is universally recognized as the greatest wide receiver in NFL history, although my man Skip would put Randy Moss up in that category.
And Michael Irvin. Neither of whom used Stickum, by the way, and both of who prided themselves and believed they were better than Jerry Rice. So Jerry Rice's stature may very well be hurt by this because if you're a Randy Moss or you're a Michael Irvin and your attitude is like, you're like, I didn't use any Stickum, well, then you weren't assisted. The other argument that could be made is that people make the point that if this were a baseball and it was an issue of pine tar or something like that, it would be a national story. So why is this being, quote unquote, figuratively speaking, swept under the rug? Having made that argument, that's a very valid point, which unfortunately for me puts Jerry Rice under the spotlight in a very negative fashion. In 1981, due to Lester Hayes using it excessively, the Stickum, the spray, and all of that stuff was banned by the NFL. He is acknowledging that he used it anyway. If you are acknowledging that you used it anyway, you're acknowledging that you openly defied and circumvented the rules. That is not something that Jerry Rice is known for doing. Yeah. When you combine that with the fact that one of the things that is untold and never, very rarely, if ever, gets mentioned, Jerry Rice was one of those ultra and ultimate competitors. Guys recognize and still give him props for being the best because he ran the greatest routes, he had the hardest practice habits, he worked his butt off catching bricks from his dad growing up and stuff like that. But they also said he was never inclined to help anybody, to work with them, to help make better receivers. They considered him incredibly, incredibly selfish. I bring that up because now that this has happened, it wouldn't surprise me at all if guys came out of the woodwork to try and hurt somebody's reputation that is universally recognized by us all as the greatest wide receiver ever. It's unfortunate. I wish Jerry Rice luck in dealing with this matter. I'm sorry that he has to deal with it, but he opened his mouth and opened the Pandora's box, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to shove aside. I also know and like Jerry Rice very much personally, but he is coming across right now as a towering, all-time hypocrite for blasting the Patriots for, to quote him, point blank, I feel like it was cheating against, obviously, the Indianapolis Colts. And he said that in that game, the Patriots had a decided advantage, even though the balls were legally inflated, obviously, at halftime. So Jerry got caught. He got backed into a corner, and he reached for the I didn't know it was a rule excuse, which is a little hard for me to believe. He was covering his gloves with Stickum. So not only did he wear gloves, which gives you a little better grip, he is just, and there's some images of them on the internet that you can see. They show the gloves up close. They were absolutely just caked with Stickum, both gloves. And then he got further pushed back into a corner, and he said he reached for the everybody is doing it excuse.
Well, Chris Carter called him on it. Nope, I wasn't. And you say that Randy Moss and Michael Irvin were also not using Stickum. I didn't know that. Is that?
That's what I was told.
Okay, good.
I didn't speak to them about that.
Fair enough. But I don't know that Michael Irvin used Stickum. I covered those teams. Maybe I missed it. But my point is, Jerry was throwing stones from a glass house, to quote biblical scripture. You know, like that's what you're doing, because you were living in a glass house because you were cheating. And I can make the case that Jerry Rice using illegal Stickum on his gloved hands gave the San Francisco 49ers at least as much of an advantage as allegedly the Patriots have gotten from slightly underinflated footballs. At least as much advantage, since he was, by all accounts, the greatest receiver of all time and the driving force behind 2 of Joe Montana's Super Bowl victories, and then he went on, obviously, with Steve Young. So the Patriot fans are screaming bloody murder here because he looks like such a hypocrite.
There's no question about that, and that's unfortunate because, I mean, you know, I like Jerry Rice personally. I know you do. We know his work ethic, his greatness is not to be questioned.
No.
But when you are so ultra competitive that you're perceived as an individual who never reached back to really help guys, your contemporaries, meaning other wide receivers, you know something like this, guys are going to come out of the woodwork and say, wait a minute, you sat there and snubbed your nose at us and you were doing this?
Yeah.
They're gonna be all over him, and I find that unfortunate because Jerry Rice is synonymous with greatness.
Yep. And final point, I wish we had the results of the ongoing NFL investigation into Deflategate, because I still don't know what they're going to come up with here.
So. Most receptions in NFL history, Jerry Rice, followed by Tony Gonzalez, Marvin Harrison, and Chris Carter, our very own. Coming up next, folks, a Tampa Bay great wants to mentor Jameis Winston if he decides or if he gets drafted by the Bucs. Good idea or bad idea? That is the debate after the break. We'll be right back.
Be very careful about what I'm going to say. Derek Brooks comes across as an incredibly religious man. I get text messages from...
Trust me, he is.
Right.
Yes.
No. I'm not questioning it.
Right.
You have people who believe in the Lord and what have you, but they don't want it. They don't want to be plummeted by it. Jameis Winston could very well end up being that kind of guy. Does that mean he would resent Derek Brooks? Of course not. Derek Brooks is family because you went to the same institution as he starred in. He's fond of your parents.
Sure.
They reached out. You have a connection. All of these things. I think it's something that could be incredibly beneficial for Jameis Winston. I think Jameis Winston would be welcoming of it. You know, I think that he receptive to it rather, and I think he'd be somebody that would learn a great deal from it. What you have to concern yourself about, in my opinion, with personalities like Jameis is that somebody could be so straight and narrow.
Yeah.
You don't resent them for it. They just bore you. And because of that, you're in danger of tuning them out, although you don't intend to do so. You are young, you want to live, you want to have a good time. You don't have to go the Johnny Manziel route or anything like that. But at the same time, you don't want to go to the other extreme either. And so it's dicey. Like if it were me, I would be the kind of guy, if I was Jameis Winston, this is a guy that would be a mentor. I would listen to him. I would have conversations with him all the time. But the last thing I would want to do is live with him. Yeah. Because I know that there are some things that I might want to do that, dare I say, Derek Brooks might not be down with. And so as a result, I don't mind your counsel and your tutelage. Sure. But I don't want you to be invasive. And I'm not saying that Derek Brooks would do that intentionally. I'm not saying he would do it at all. I'm saying you don't know how Jameis Winston would interpret it. And I'm not saying that Jameis Winston would interpret it like he thinks he's big and bad and doesn't want to listen. Yep. Not at all. There are people we love dearly, we admire, we want to embrace their counsel. But at the same time, it's almost like that great teacher. Yeah. Sometimes you're listening to them and you inhale every word they say. Other times their voices sounds like nails on a chalkboard, and you just don't want to hear it. Yeah. And does somebody who is in a mentorship position know how to gauge when to give it to you and when to step back and lay off and let you make certain mistakes, albeit minuscule, just to grow.
Yeah.
That would be the challenge. But if there's anybody that's qualified to take it up, it would be Derrick Brooks, but that would still be my concern. And that's no knock against Jameis Winston.
No.
It's just youthful exuberance or whatever.
You
want to live and enjoy your life.
I agree. And he might, and I don't know Jameis enough to know this, but he might find this spiritual component that you talk about a little overwhelming, like a little too much, like, oh, I don't know.
And sometimes I would. And I'm in my 40s.
You might. And Derrick, as we know, he's a straight arrow now.
Yes.
He's all business. He's a good man with a huge heart. But he is all business about this. And after a while, Jameis might say,
you in your early 20s, so anybody comes to you all business is a turnoff.
I know.
Because you're like, I only got one life. I gotta have some fun.
But trust me, the more Jameis listens, the better he'll be.
Okay.
Let's talk about this. The Bucs again have the first pick in the NFL draft. Winston, top player on our Todd McShay's mock draft, going to Tampa Bay. We'll see if that relationship actually transpires and evolves. When we come back, Carmelo, he could be out of the All-Star game, done for the season. The gentleman will weigh in. Good idea or bad idea?